Hey everybody, Chris the Old Ass Retro Gamer here. Today I'm going to discuss 5 of my least favorite video gaming memories. Now I'm not talking about video games that were bad or disappointing or anything like that. I'm talking about events in my history that I'm not very fond of that revolved around video gaming. There's good ones. There's also going to be bad ones. So as an example of a bad gaming memory, it had to do with the Mad Max Nintendo video game, which I did that rant on a while back. And if you want to see the video on that, I'll put the link in the description below. Yes, it had to do with a video game, but it was more about the company that made it that is a bad memory for me. So that's what you should probably expect for these stories. Why? Because not everything in life is a top 10 list. So what could have possibly been bad when it comes to gaming? Because gaming is awesome. Story time! How about this? Like when I bought my 3DO. Not that my 3DO was bad. I love it. It's a great system that is very underrated. I will do a video about that on its own. It was what I had to do to get it back when it was first released. So the system was released, I think, around 1994. And when it was released by Panasonic, it had a $700 price tag. Inflated for today's dollars, that's got to be around like $1,200. So back in those days, that was a lot of money, and I was not making much. I made about $7 an hour back then, but I really wanted a 3DO. Why? Because it had the killer app, and that was Way of the Warrior by Naughty Dog. It was a Mortal Kombat 2 clone, and back then, Mortal Kombat 2 was my everything. I had to have everything that looked like it, resembled it, played like it. I was a little OCD about it. I had seen it being played at Best Buy at a demo station they had, and I had to have it. The only problem was, the system was $700. That was not an amount of money that I just had laying around, so I had to do something about it. What did I do to get my 3DO? There was a store near me, a couple of towns over, called Software Junction. They accepted trade-ins. I had gone to Software Junction to see what they had for sale, and they were talking up the 3DO, something fierce, and I said, I really want that thing. What would you guys take in exchange for one? And unfortunately, that was my entire Sega Genesis / Sega CD collection, which I had a very, very large collection of. I told them what I had in my collection, and they pretty much said, well, if you were to trade in your Sega Genesis and all your games and your Sega CD and all those games, I think you'd have pretty much all you would need in order to afford the 3DO. You might have to throw in a few dollars, just in case. But, for the most part, it would be paid for. So, being the idiot that I was, I went home and I gathered up everything I had for those systems, dragged them all down to the store, traded them in, got a 3DO, went out and bought a copy of Way of the Warrior, and lo and behold, it was not good. I liked it for the first maybe half hour that I played it, and then the longer I played it, the more I disliked it. And by the end of the day, I was just mad at myself for doing that. I should never have traded in my Sega CD because I had a lot of games that nowadays are worth a ton of money. Later on down the line, the 3DO became worth having. I mean, games started to come out for that system that were fantastic and, made the purchase worthwhile. But at the time, I was just so mad at myself that I did that. And, whatever. That's the risk you take when it comes to these new systems. You never know what you're going to get. Back then, there was no internet, so I couldn't go online and look up reviews and YouTube videos on the subject and research it the way you can now. I basically had to make a judgment call, and it was a bad call. But do I regret it? At the time I did, but later on down the line I was okay with it. Another bad memory had to do with the release of the Dreamcast. Back in 1999 when the Dreamcast was coming out, I was super excited because I was one of the few people in my group of friends that had a Saturn, and I loved it. I thought it was a very underrated system, ton of fun. So naturally, the next step up, which was the Dreamcast, was going to be mind-blowing. So I not only reserved the console, but I reserved around 75% of the games that were being released on day one. And I was quite a chunk of money, but back then I was making a little bit more than I used to, so I could afford it, at least at that point in time I could, although I did mention it before, I did eat ramen for about a week after that. So, release happens on September 9th, 1999. Ran out, got my system at KB Toys, and there was a few games there that I'd also reserved. And across the hall in the mall where the KB Toys was a Software Etc., and I'd reserved a bunch of games there also, picked them up, brought them all home, tried to play some of them. Some of them didn't work. I do believe it was Sonic Adventure and Mortal Kombat Gold and Ready to Rumble and Blue Stinger. I thought it was the console that was the issue. So I brought the console back to KB Toys, told the manager, who was this really nice lady who I had a rapport going with her. So I told her that the console wasn't working correctly, and she was okay with it. She basically just exchanged it for a new one, and I went on my way. Brought that home, hooked it back up, tried to play the games that weren't working. They didn't work again. So I brought the system back again. She was still understanding, but you could see it was kind of annoying her a little bit that, this was happening. So she gave me another one to take home. And I brought that home. The games didn't work on that one either. So I brought it back a third time. And at this point, she was not happy. And she had also said that there was a couple of other people that were having the same problems, and she had exchanged Dreamcast for them also. But she pretty much said, this is the last time I'm doing this. So I brought it home, still didn't work. So I started asking around, and I went over to the software, etc. It turns out that there was a batch of games that just didn't work for some reason. They were defective. And a lot of them were the ones that I owned. When it came to the Midway games like Mortal Kombat Gold and Ready to Rumble, I brought them back to the store I bought them at, which was that software, etc., and they gave me ones that worked, which is why a lot of them have that hot new tag on the cover, because those are the ones that were fixed. When it came to the Sonic Adventure and the Blue Stinger, I had to send those discs back to the corporations that made them, which was Sega and Activision, and they would send you a replacement disc that hopefully worked. That took about a month. I was not happy about that because I had bought these games for $50, couldn't play them for a month, which was ridiculous. But luckily I did have all those other games that I had purchased at the same time as the system that did work that I was able to play. But that was not a fun time. Not only did the lady that ran that KB Toys think I was trying to pull some fast one over on her, and from that point on, we really didn't talk that much whenever I go into the store. I love the Dreamcast. It is my second favorite system of all time nowadays. It's the only system that I am trying to get a complete collection for now. But they botched that release. Another one is when my PlayStation 3 decided to break down. It happened at a very, very inopportune time. When was that? That was when I was unemployed. I had lost my job of 11 years back in 2011, and I was unemployed for about 4 months. All of the luxuries that I had to cancel online and wherever else they were to conserve money. So naturally, during this period, I'm depressed. I don't have a job. I couldn't find a job that's in the particular field in which I work. I had no money to do anything, so I really couldn't go and hang out with any of my friends without them having to pay for me, which I wasn't going to ask them to do. So I pretty much was a recluse back then. I had to give up a passion of mine, which was, I had to sell my video game collection. The only thing I really had that kept me sane back then was my PlayStation 3. I have a very large Blu-ray collection, so that was the only Blu-ray player I had in the house was the PS3. I also kept my subscription to not only Hulu, but Netflix, so I had a stream of entertainment coming in because I wasn't able to go to the movies or have cable or any of those things. Basically, the PlayStation 3 was my entertainment hub. And about 2 months into my unemployment, it decided to just randomly crap out. I had just beaten the first Resistance game, go to pop in Resistance 2, and it just died. So I was pretty upset. And when I had contacted Sony about getting it fixed, turns out my warranty had expired. So I had to fork up $150 to get it fixed. Not a good time to be spending that kind of money. I had to do it. So I paid $150, shipped it out to Sony to get it repaired. And this model of PlayStation 3 that I had was the original model, the one that was backwards compatible, and the big, huge, bulky one, and it had the biggest hard drive that was available in that model. And I want to say it was about 250 gigs. Could have been more. I can't remember. It was a while back. So I get it back in the mail about 3 weeks later, and they send me the same model, but the hard drive was completely different. They basically sent me a brand new PlayStation 3, but the hard drive in it was way smaller than the one that I originally had. 60 gigs or something like that. So not only were all of my saves and all my information, all the games that I had downloaded gone completely, I now didn't have enough room on my hard drive for all that stuff when I decided I needed to re-download it. So all this money that I had spent previously on DLC and digital video games and all that was gone because I did not have any more room on my hard drive to put these back on if I wanted to keep playing the physical games, because a lot of them required installs. So I now can maybe have a handful of games installed on my PS3 at any given time. I had no room for anything frivolous. And when I contacted Sony about this and I said, hey, I sent you this one to repair, why couldn't you send me mine back? And they were like, oh, well, it was just completely shot on the inside, and we just figured that to get it back to you as fast as possible, we would just give you a new one. I'm like, well, you could have at least given me one with the same hard drive space. And they're like, we don't have any of those. So we sent you the only ones we had available, which was this. I'm like, you could have sent me one of the newer model ones. I don't care about the backwards compatibility. Why didn't you send me one that has the same hard drive space? They're like, sorry, but that's what you got. I was kind of pissed. So now my hard drive is completely full. It was filled basically 2 months after I got it back. And I need to get a new one because I have no room for any of these games that I have bought recently. So a lot of these PlayStation 3 games you see in these pickup videos that I was making, I cannot play them because there's no room for the saves or the installs or any of that kind of stuff. Most of the time, whenever I get a notification from Netflix or Hulu or one of the apps that I have that there's an update that I need to download, I'm usually pretty afraid that there's not going to be room on my hard drive for it. So yeah, I need to look into getting another PlayStation 3 in the immediate future. I was not happy with Sony for quite a while after that. That was quite a big face fucking I got from them. So another bad memory about gaming had to do with the Nintendo 64's release. I was a huge Nintendo fanboy, and the Super Nintendo back then and still is my favorite video gaming console of all time. So when I heard the next big Nintendo console was coming out, yeah, you're damn right, I went out and I reserved it. 2 reservation stories, the only 2 times I've ever reserved a console in my life. And of course, both of them were fucked up. Anyway, I reserved my Nintendo 64 at a local Toys R Us, and 3 of the games that were coming out at launch. It was Super Mario 64, Pilotwings 64, and Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Turns out Shadows of the Empire had gotten delayed right along with this console and was going to be coming out 6 months later. This I did not know when I went to go pick up my Nintendo 64 because there was no internet back then. There was no way I could find these things out. They didn't call my house and say, oh, by the way, your reservation is going to be 6 months late. No, it was just you get there, you find out about it, you've got to deal with it. So I go to the Toys R Us the day that the Nintendo 64 is released. I pick up my console, I pick up my Mario 64, I pick up my Pilotwings 64, get told about Shadows of the Empire not being released for another 6 months, get kind of upset because that was the game I was the most looking forward to playing for this system, and I go home. So I take the system home, I hook it up, I start playing it. Wasn't a big fan. I started playing Super Mario 64, and I did not like it at all. I was used to the way that Mario Brothers and Mario World were set up, where it was you go through the level, once the level's over, you move on to the next one. The whole setup in 64 was you finish the level, you got to go back and do it again to look for something else in it, and you got to keep doing that over and over again. And as far as I was concerned, it was just a way to lengthen the game artificially, and it just really rubbed me the wrong way. And 2, I was not a fan of that controller. I still, to this day, hate that controller with every fiber of my being. That's a lot of fibers. So I decided to try Pilotwings 64, and as much as I loved Pilotwings for the Super Nintendo, I hated Pilotwings 64. I absolutely despised it. So, not only had I waited an extra, I don't know how many months it was to get the Nintendo 64 after it was delayed, and the game that I really wanted to play the most was delayed way past the release date, the 2 games that we were stuck with for the first 6 months of this console's release, I could not stand. I was mad. Because back when the Nintendo 64 was released, I was making just slightly over minimum wage at a video store. So dropping $250 for the system and then plus $60-some for each of these games all at once was kind of a big deal. So if this thing did not blow my mind, I was going to be super pissed. And I was. I was so furious. I was so mad that I went to the video store that I worked at and I sold the Nintendo 64 and the 2 games that I bought to my boss so he can put them out for rental. And he paid me full price. He paid me exactly what I paid for them, so I got my money back. A year later, I bought another Nintendo 64 when the games that I really wanted to play started to come out. To this day, it still bugs me because the Nintendo 64 is probably my least favorite gaming console ever. Out of all the consoles that I have the least amount of games for it. I have more Atari 2600 games in my collection than I do Nintendo 64 games. That's the way it worked. So another bad memory I have about gaming had to do with Mortal Kombat 2, which at the time that arcade game came out was my favorite game of all time, like I said before. That gaming store, Software Junction, where I had bought the 3DO, they had some pull somewhere within Midway, and were able to get a couple of the actors who played the characters in the video game of Mortal Kombat 2 to show up at their store to celebrate the release of Mortal Kombat 2 on the home consoles. When I heard about this, I was all over it. The celebrities that were going to be at the store were Daniel Pesina, who played Johnny Cage. I do believe he also played all of the Lin Kuei ninjas, like Sub-Zero, Scorpion, and Reptile. And Dr. Philip Ahn, who played Shang Tsung. And I was over the moon about this because Johnny Cage and Shang Tsung were the two characters I played exclusively in that game. So the day that this was happening, I grabbed my copy of Mortal Kombat 2 for the Super Nintendo that I had bought, and I brought my ass over to that store, and I stood in line to get their autographs. Back then, I was a little socially awkward. I was really quiet, so I didn't really have any intention of talking to them. I just kind of would have said, hey, how you doing, and thanks for the autograph, and that was pretty much all I planned on doing. So I get in line with one of my friends. So as I'm getting closer to the table, I also realize that there are not only the two actors sitting there, but there's also two women behind them who I didn't recognize. And I figured they were their girlfriends or whatever. So I get up to the table, and the first person I get to is Philip Ahn. And he seemed like a very nice guy. He asked me how I was doing, and if I wanted my autograph personalized, and I told him no. So he signed the box for Mortal Kombat 2, and also a poster that I was given at the door. And I slide on over to Daniel Pesina. And Daniel Pesina says, hey, how you doing? And I say, I'm fine, how are you? And he asks me which character is my favorite in the game. I say, the two of you, actually. And he kind of gives me this look. And he goes, what? And I said, you two are probably my favorite characters in the game. And he looks at me and he just kind of says with this weird smirk on his face, that is the worst answer I've ever heard from anybody that I've asked that question. I just kind of was taken aback. I'm like, what? I say, did I say something wrong? Philip Ahn kind of looks at me and goes, most people just will say the names of the characters. And at that point, Pesina kind of mumbled something under his breath. What I heard was retard. And at that moment, those two women that were behind him and Philip Ahn just started giggling uncontrollably. And then Pesina started laughing. I don't remember Philip Ahn laughing. I just think he kind of went, whatever, I'm dealing with the person that's in front of me. I was kind of like, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? I didn't understand what had just happened. And it really wasn't anything that I did. I just found out later on that Daniel Pesina has a history of just being a complete dick. Not only was he a jerk-off, he also made a big boo-boo by dressing up as Johnny Cage and doing a print ad for another fighting game called Bloodstorm. And he got his ass fired from working on any of the games in the future. So on top of him being a complete douche, he's also kind of stupid. As this kind of socially awkward teenager, I'm walking away and I'm like, what did I do wrong? What did I say that was wrong? Why did he treat me like that? What just happened? I don't understand. I was kind of upset about it. So I'm standing outside the store waiting for my friend to come out. I asked him if he wanted to go because I was kind of pissed off. And then he tells me that those two women that were sitting behind them were the actresses from the game. It was the actress who plays Sonya and the actress who played Mileena and Kitana. So that was not a good memory. I was really mad about that for a long time because I couldn't figure out what I had done wrong. And I didn't do anything wrong as far as I was concerned. I answered his question. I might have answered it a little awkwardly, but it doesn't give him the permission to call me a retard. So when I heard that he wasn't going to be returning for Mortal Kombat 3 because of what he did with that Bloodstorm ad, karma kind of bit him right in the ass. I'm not bitter. Actually, I kind of am, because even to this day, I still kind of have an aversion to playing as Johnny Cage in any Mortal Kombat game. Even in Mortal Kombat X, outside of having to be forced to play as Johnny Cage for the story mode, I don't like playing as that character at all. And to prove that I got that autograph, as you can see right here is Philip Ahn's autograph, and over here is Shithead Pesina's. So those are 5 of my worst video gaming memories. So I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. The button is right here. Just click it. Just click it. It's staring at you right in the face. Just click it. Why not? It's right there. Just do it. Please comment on the video. What are some of your least favorite moments in your history revolving around gaming? I want to know. Am I the only one that had bad experiences with the releases of the Dreamcast and the Nintendo 64? Have you ever met somebody that completely treated you like shit that you sort of looked up to at the time? You ever have something just crap out on you at the exact wrong moment? Let me know. I want to hear your stories as well. Please share the video on the Facebooks and the Twitters and all those other awesome social media places. Most of them I don't even know exist because I'm so behind the times on that kind of thing. That's why I'm the old-ass retro gamer. And give the video a thumbs up to let me know that you are enjoying yourself. So until next time, I am Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, signing off.